And also, so what is it? And I'm not asking a legal question. I'm trying to see who's on. Shay's on probably.
Shay's here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not intending to ask a formal legal question, but I am curious. So how do we get to do a virtual meeting now? Is there some emergency amendment to the open meeting requirement that allows virtual? And then my question B is going to be, I guess part of what we do might be driven with whatever that provision is being continued or not.
Yeah, so my understanding is that we are able to meet virtually pursuant to a disaster declaration by the governor, which was just recently extended, I want to say last Friday, by proclamation. So for a little while longer, we do have the legal authority to meet virtually like this.
Right. And then my understanding is that there was actually a bill that we were tracking through the legislative session that would essentially allow virtual meetings under non-emergency circumstances as well. So sounds like what we've been doing may be something. If that made it to the governor's desk, I'd have to follow up with our IG person, but that potentially could be an option going forward as well.
Gee, before we go live, should I say, wow, an actual nice piece of legislation thinking of our local governments. How thoughtful.
Right. Well, before we kick off, I just wanted to formally introduce Diane English. She is our newest member to the Planning and Zoning Commission. She actually comes to us from the Zoning Board of Adjustment. So she served, I believe you started in 2020, last year was your appointment. So she served as an alternate. So we're excited to have her as a full-time member on the Planning and Zoning Commission, and will be a great addition to all of you. And I know she's excited. We had the opportunity to give her an orientation and get her up to speed on the types of things that come before the Planning and Zoning Commission. And also Abby was able to give her a briefing on the Hill item, which is an action item on your agenda for this evening. So she is all set and ready to go. And welcome.
I even had a chance to drive through the neighborhood yesterday. Excellent. So I could see it firsthand, and it all makes sense.
Very good.
Diane, welcome.
Thank you.
Control room, are we good to go?
Let's see, do we have everybody? 1, 2, 3.
Mr. Simeon is the only one that's
5. Yes. I mean, I guess technically we have 5, which meets quorum, correct, Shay?
Yes, that is correct. There is a quorum.
Okay, good to go.
I was just checking with the control room. Hadn't heard from them yet.
Yes, we're good.
Was that you, Tim?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
We're good to go, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I now call to order the Tuesday, June 8, 2021 meeting of the City of Sugar Land Planning and Zoning Commission. Item 3A, public comment. Citizens who desire to address the commission with regard to matters on the agenda will be met and or received at this time. Do we have anyone present or signed up for public comment?
No, sir, we do not.
All right, then we'll move on to item 4A, consideration of an action on the minutes of the May 27, 2021 meeting. You've received the minutes in the packet. Please let me know if anyone has any comments or revisions to the minutes. Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Commissioner, I'd make a motion to approve the minutes.
Got a motion to approve the minutes by Commissioner Brown. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Got a second from Commissioner Parikh. Any further discussion? All right, if you'll please vote at this time.
Well,
I'm studying a really small screen to see where we are with the vote. All right, Canaan's going, Bushol's going, Hart.
well,
And Commissioner England, is your voting screen up or?
no, it hasn't.
Okay.
It hasn't come up. It worked when we did training, but I don't see the opportunity to Vote.
All right, can we take a voice vote and a hand vote then for you, Commissioner? Are you in favor of approval of the minutes?
Yes, I'm in favor.
All right, then we should be good on that, and that motion passes. Thank you very much. Item 5A, consideration of and action on a recommendation for the Hill Area Residential HR-1 zoning district development regulations and other applicable code sections found in Chapter 2 of the Development Code of the City of Sugar Land to the mayor and members of the City Council. I think we've got Abigail Martinez for the presentation. Abby, take it. It's all yours.
Good evening, Commission. I'm happy to be before you tonight. I will be covering a brief background of the project and just to remind you where we are. And then I will be covering the summary of the proposed changes to the regulation. As you remember, during the last meeting, at the May 27th meeting, I covered the regulations in detail, resulted in some additional changes from the Commission's feedback, and then from there, we'll forward with your consideration and action and then next steps. Next slide. So some very quick background here. The Hill neighborhood is located north of Highway 90, east of the Char House, along Main Street there. The Hill is designated by the land use plan as a company town neighborhood. And so a project was initiated in fall 2018 when we heard concerns over redevelopment happening in the area. And then the land use plan also lists this as an action item. So the project was officially kicked off when City Council appointed a 5-member steering committee of property owners in the Hill to help guide the process for the project. The project was divided into 2 phases. First, a public engagement phase to understand whether the neighborhood as a whole was concerned about redevelopment. And so that resulted in having several public engagement efforts with surveys and meetings and such, which ultimately resulted in the community directing us to draft regulations to maintain the character of the neighborhood. And they also supported with us moving into a phase 2 of the project, which consisted of implementation. So we completed some initial implementation items that included things such as garage setbacks, porch setbacks. We also modified the HR1 zoning boundaries to include the homes east of Wood Street and north of Lakeview Drive into the HR1 zoning district. Next slide. And so we're kind of on the last phase or last set of the implementation phase that consists of drafting character regulations to build in character. And so we hired a consultant to help us with this process, and then of course continued working with the committee throughout the drafting of the regulations. And then of course we also continued engaging with the Hill property owners, where we even had a survey with the draft design standard options, and we received 76 responses. And so just as a reminder, the Planning and Zoning Commission's role here is to provide feedback on the administration of the regulations, and also consider the public input over the 3-year process for this project. Next slide. And the draft regulation addressed the topics listed here on the slide, anywhere from building width, height, and other items that kind of help shape the character of the Hill, and having new construction and additions build more so in scale with the existing homes in the area, but also maintaining the balance of having a home that is of a desirable size for a modern family, which was the main goal and vision for the Hill neighborhood. And so we drafted regulations in direct response to the survey feedback, as well as with the committee's recommendation. And then we made the draft regulations available for community input via an online town hall. And so that resulted in some minor changes. Next slide. The online town hall was open from April 16th through May 9th. And so we received a total of 10 comments. 2 of those comments resulted in changes to the regulations that included clarifying that 1 carport and 1 garage is permitted. And then we also added an exemption for the HR1 residential buildings that will allow for the painting of brick in this area. Other comments address things such as tree regulations, garages, and the items listed on the slide here, but those did not result in any changes. Next slide. And so the commission held a public hearing on May 27th, where 2 Hill Committee members provided comments in support of the draft regulations. Overall, the commission's feedback generally concurred with the regulations. They did ask some clarifying questions, and we addressed those during the meeting. And then you also provided some suggestions to help clarify the language and intent of the regulations. Next slide. And so here I'm gonna go through kind of a summary of the changes to the regulations, and it's listed by section in the development code. So if you want to follow along, you have a redlined document in your packet. So I'll start with Article 2, Part 7, HR1 District. This is where the bulk of the changes were. In Section 2-155, we added definitions for some of the new regulations that we included for building to lot width ratio, roof pitch, and stoop. Under Section 2-156, this is a new section that is for the site development permit. The intent of this section is to allow flexibility to identified regulations if the project meets the character and intent of the HR1 district. And so the Planning and Zoning Commission is the one who determines if the project is in character under certain criteria, which includes things that character elements that are included in this project. The next section is Section 2-158. We redefined maximum height to the top of the ridge. Previously, the code had the maximum height be measured from the finished grade to the midpoint of the gable. And so we saw that wasn't necessarily appropriate. We heard some concerns about the maximum height of the homes in the area. And so we redefined the height to be to the top of the ridge. The next change here is reducing the floor to area ratio to 0.45. It was 0.71, and so that was reduced to 0.45, so that the total square footage of the building was more in character and more in scale with the existing homes. And that was consistent with the community input from the survey. The next one that we have here is maximum building width in front of the lot based on the lot width. So this is regulating the building width just in the front half of the lot based on the lot width. So a lot that is less than 60 feet wide can have a 30 feet maximum building width, and a lot that is 60 feet wide or greater can have a building width according to the 0.46 building to lot width ratio. So essentially you take your existing lot width, you multiply it by the ratio, and then that gives you your allowed building width in the front portion of the lot. And then in the rear, the building can be up to the side setbacks and rear setbacks. The next change here that we have is applying a minimum roof pitch of 4/12. That's just more so to eliminate any sort of flat roofs that may be found in architectural styles that are more either modern or contemporary. And so that way that kind of prevents those type of homes from being in the hill. Next slide. The next one that we have here is increasing the garage front facade setback to 25 feet. We found that we had previously implemented this to be 15 feet, but there wasn't enough of a visual separation from the front facade, since the character in this area is that garages are built towards the rear of the property. So this will help kind of further encourage people to build further back the garages. We also found that the regulations didn't necessarily address carports, so we went ahead and required that carports also follow the garage regulations. And then also require new construction to incorporate entry features that are common in the hill. So this would include requiring a 4-foot wide walkway from the front entrance to the sidewalk and or curb. That would need to be required with new construction. And then also having the option of including either a 6-foot deep porch or stoop. So they would be required to have the walkway, and then plus they could have the option of doing either a 6-foot deep porch or stoop that would be incorporated as an entry feature to kind of keep that consistent character in the hill. Next slide. The next section we added is 2-160, and this is related to the tree regulations, more so focused on tree preservation. But we enhanced the minimum tree planting requirement so that new trees must be 4-inch caliber in size. And then we also required that one protected tree would be preserved in the front half of the lot for any demolitions, new construction, or additions. And we also, in case they weren't able to reasonably protect that one tree, we did provide some options for removal and replacement with director approval. We also added an incentive for preserving more than one tree in that front portion of the lot by granting additional building width. So essentially, if you preserve more than the minimum requirement, which is one tree, you're able to get additional building width. So let's say you preserve 2 protected trees, then if your lot is less than 60 feet wide, you can go up to 35 feet of maximum building width. And again, that's in the front portion of the lot. And then if your lot is greater than 60 feet wide, your building to lot width ratio increases to 0.5. Next slide. The other changes that we made were related to building finishes, and this is in Article X. We made some changes to sections 2-311, 2-312, and then 2-313 that included some administrative changes such as text cleanup and requiring elevations and additional definitions. In section 2-315, this is where we added a new section for the hill for the finish requirements for residential buildings. One of the things that we asked people in the survey was about requiring a maximum of 2 finishes consistent with the character of the hill, and the community supported that, so that's reflected here. And then we also added some primary and secondary building finish requirements. For the hill, the primary finish requirement equals a minimum of 85% for each facade, and then for secondary finishes, it would be 15% maximum for each facade. So your primary finish materials would be horizontal siding, and that could be either wood or fiber cement, and I believe the other one is brick. And then your secondary finishes would be more so your accent finishes, such as board and batten siding, and a few others. And then how those work together with is that you only are able to have 2, which is consistent with the look of the look of the hill and the older homes there. Next slide. In Article 3, Section 2-171, we clarified that in HR1, the roof gables cannot exceed the maximum height of the 27 feet. In Article 4, Section 2-191, we added language there to prohibit fences in front of the buildings in the hill. And then in Article 15, in landscaping and screening, there were some administrative changes to reflect the HR1 revisions that were in Part 7. Next slide. And so as a result of the May 27th meeting, the Commission had some additional feedback and changes for the regulations. So in Section 2-156, the site development permit, we went ahead and clarified that only the identified regulations or the listed regulations in that section are the ones who qualify for a permit. And there was a question regarding precedent and how that would work. Like if the Commission were to grant a permit for one project to deviate from the regulations in a certain amount, if that would set a precedent for the next project. And so here we clarified that the Commission would examine each on a case-by-case basis. And that explanation was included in your packet. So the Commission would treat each individual project on a case-by-case basis and wouldn't look towards a previously granted permit for basis. They would just look at it individually. In Table 2-158.1, maximum garage size, One of the commissioners suggested to make the threshold of the lot size consistent. And so we kind of looked further into why that was different. And so we found that the original regulation applies to all residential zoning districts. And so when we moved that particular regulation, we moved it to Part 7 with the 2020 revisions, and we kind of did a little bit more digging and found that the threshold allows for a 600 square foot garage, which essentially is like 20 by 30, and we don't recommend changing the size due to that. And then we also went ahead and applied the maximum size to carports, and the total size of the carports and garage would be cumulative. We went back to the original regulation and found that that regulation applied to both garages and carports, and so we went ahead and included it for carports as well to match that. Next slide. In section 2-158C regarding entry features and walkways, we rearranged the language to clarify which one was required versus optional. So that way the one that's required is listed first. And then the ones where you have the option of either or is listed second. That way it was a little bit more clear. And then we deleted the last portion of text in subsection C2. For section 2-160 regulations, we did specify that additional documentation for tree removal would be listed in the development application handbook. That way we can the applicant as well as staff can look to that to see what is required. And then other comments included just making sure and going through checking for capitalization of defined terms and kind of more so like cleaning up that part of it. Next slide. And so points for your consideration tonight is the proposed changes are consistent with public input and recommendations of the phase 1 of the project. The Hill Neighborhood Steering Committee, a city council appointed committee reviewed and endorsed the proposed changes, and the regulations seek to preserve the character of the Hill as supported by the Hill community. Next slide. And so the next steps and recommendations would be for the commission's consideration and action. And staff recommends the recommendation of approval to the mayor and city council for the changes to the Hill Area Residential Zoning District regulations found in Chapter 2 of the Development Code of the City of Sugar Land. And we anticipate holding a workshop with city council on the draft regulations for June 22nd. Next slide. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Abby, for a great presentation again. I would point out before I ask the commissioners if there are any other questions that we did receive a presentation during our May 27th meeting. We also held a public hearing at that time, so we have met that requirement as well. So we'll turn directly to see if there are any comments from the commissioners. Let me at this time formally and on the record welcome Diane English as new commissioner to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Welcome. Thank you very much for your service, and I'll give you the floor to see if you have any comments.
Really happy to join the commission, and I'm excited to have a voice in the planning and zoning guidelines that we'll be putting forth as we go on, and I look forward to working with all of you and learning from you. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Thank you. Any comments on the Hill Residential presentation? Diane, anything from you on the?
No, I didn't have any additional questions. I met with the staff on Friday and they gave me a great overview, and I've had a chance to go view the hill, and it looks sound to me. Y'all are very thorough as far as working with the community, and I think that's important that we keep the community's voice as part of our recommendation.
Perfect. Thanks so much for your comments. Commissioner Brown?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to be in agreement with Diane here. The work that went into this, and the work of staff, a lot of effort went into this. And I think at the end of the day, what has come out of this process is going to really help set the Hill up for success. So thank you to staff, and thank you to my fellow commissioners.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. Commissioner Creek?
No, I'd like to echo Commissioner Brown and Commissioner Englitz's comments. I unfortunately wasn't able to make the May 27th meeting, but I appreciate that the document was redlined, that we can see the differences in what was added based on the commission's feedback. So no additional questions. Great, thorough job as usual, and appreciate that the community was also surveyed and that they had a large input into this. So it sounds like a great project.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Landine?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. So tremendous job by the staff. I did have one question that Abby may be able to answer, which is the section in there about the commission approving each project. Are those going to be clearly articulated, where similar to like our approval of a PD, where it's pretty stringent, or will we have some latitude? Can you, other than that, that was my only question, and would just appreciate a little bit of context for what our role it will be going forward.
So the way that the site development permit process would work is that the applicant would come and submit a permit for, let's say they had a house that they wanted to build it maybe 5 feet that wider than what is currently allowed by the regulations. So they would go through and submit the permit, and then we would review and then present it to the commission, put it on your agenda for you to review. And then you would review it based on looking at things, the character elements that would be included in the project. Maybe they need to go wider because it is a 1-story house. And so maybe you would put a little bit more weight to that versus if it were like a 2-story house that was trying to maximize everything. And so you would kind of look at all of the factors that go into the character and see if it meets that. Some examples are listed there under section 2-156A. Things that's not an exhaustive list, because of course that kind of depends on the design of the project as well. And so those are kind of the things that you would be looking for, that it does meet the character, and then decide to grant or what the applicant is asking for, or if you think it should be less, you would weigh in on that.
No, that sounds great. And I guess my, as we move forward through this, as projects come up, my hope is that you guys can help us make it formulaic so that we're at least consistent in the way in which we're making recommendations going forward, especially if we're kind of the last stop before a project gets off the ground. So again, tremendous job. Appreciate that answer, and look forward to seeing this all come together.
And I'd like to add one more thing. I am putting together a reference guide that kind of helps translate the code regulations to more common terms with like scenarios, and just to help both the residents whenever they're making improvements to their homes, as well as staff. And so some of kind of that background and history of the typical architecture styles that are found in the Hill, some of those character elements that are usually included in houses, all of that will be in that reference guide. And so that will also be available to the commission as they kind of go through, if someone were to come in for a site development permit process. That way you have that context of the history and kind of architecture styles found in the Hill.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Abby, I think I have one question, and I have a couple comments. So my question is on the development permit on section 2-156. I think in the presentation you said there was language added to clarify that the commission would consider those requests on a case-by-case basis. And I just don't see it in the red line.
Sorry, I misspoke in the presentation.
Well, I don't think you did. I think it was on the slide too, so.
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so what we're approving is when we look at the red lines that are in the packet tonight for section 2-156, everything that we're being asked to make a recommendation on is in there and redlined correctly. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay, and I will just thank you for answering that question. I will just add, a couple things. First of all, I think this is tremendous work product, and I really salute everyone that was involved. The residents, everyone who took the time to provide the feedback. I think city staff is to be commended for soliciting the feedback and for incorporating the feedback into ultimately these recommendations. The report was extraordinarily well prepared. The redlining and the presentation now 2 times to this commission was very, very good. And so I'm convinced that this is a solid plan and that you have taken the opportunity to receive and integrate the public comments they received on this as well. I know that Commissioner Hart, who is not with us tonight, also expressed his appreciation to staff for the excellent work product that was generated here. So I want to make sure that that comment is also included in the record. And I think we all look forward to moving this process forward. That having been said, any other discussion? All right, anyone care to make a motion? I will be happy to. I'm going to see if I can get this language correct here. So I move that we recommend for approval to City Council the Hill Residential HR1 Zoning District Development Regulations and other applicable code sections found in Chapter 2 of the Development Code of the City of Sugar Land to the Mayor and members of City Council as presented this evening. Is there a second?
I'd be pleased to second that, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, Commissioner Landine. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? If not, if you'll please vote at this time. All right, and that passes unanimously among the members present this evening. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you very much, Abby. And again, thanks to everyone who was involved in this process, making our job much, much easier, which is always appreciated. Item 6A, reports. Planning and Zoning Commission liaison report from the June 1st, 2021 City Council meeting.
Yeah, that was me, Chairman. I went to the June 1st meeting. It was a very short meeting, but I think they covered a couple of really important items. First of all, they did a really great recognition for E.E. Reed for his years of service on the Sugar Land Legacy Foundation. And they also did a very moving posthumous years of service and contributions honor for Lieutenant Sandy Fontenot, who was on the Sugar Land Police Department. She passed away earlier in the year, and so that was really moving and heartfelt to see that. In terms of the actual agenda and the items that they went over that are relevant to us, I think there was an ordinance that they passed that basically authorizes the city manager to be able to grant exceptions to the development code regulations. That basically was pursuant to another ordinance that was passed previously. That was introduced by the economic development team and it passed unanimously. There was also a consideration and action and confirmation of Commissioner Engler and her appointment to the Planning and Zoning Commission. That was also on the agenda that passed unanimously as well. And then lastly, I think there was also an ordinance that they passed that basically would give some relief to folks who buy generators. So it was a generator rebate program where if you buy a generator between certain dates, the installation fee is waived. So there was some good discussion, but ultimately that passed as well. And that was pretty much it. Very, very short and sweet meeting.
Thanks very much, AP. Excellent report. Item 6B, city staff report.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, the next meeting will be June the 24th, and as we kind of previewed last time, it's still scheduled for the annual capital improvements program. Engineering will be leading that effort. We'll go through the program and all the proposals, and then that will be reviewed by y'all, and then ultimately they will be looking later that evening for your recommendation on it to the mayor and council. And we also have a rezoning from an interim R1 to a permanent R1 up on Alston Road for a tract up in that area that is currently vacant. So we'll have the public hearing and potentially CNA that night as well. That is everything we have. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Doug. That's it for the agenda. Welcome again, Commissioner English. Happy to have you with this group. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you. There's your cue. All right, a second. May I have a second on that?
I'll second.
All right, good. A motion to adjourn by Commissioner Brown, seconded by Commissioner English. We'll typically do a hand vote on this one. I can't imagine there would ever be any opposition to that. And we are in fact adjourned. Thank you so much for your time this evening. It was good to see you, and we will see you all on the 24th, if not sooner. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.